Welcome to you. Thank you for joining us on Inheritance Conversations. My name is Angela, your host. This is the Gaze Insights channel. Today, we want to look at family members who are always angry. And I think many families have angry relatives who come in when we're dealing with inheritance. Anger is a very wide topic, and it cuts to the very core of who we are when we're managing and healing our emotional patterns. When we are discussing inheritance, it takes on a tone that we need to analyze and see whether we are part of the problem. Every family has at least one angry person. So it's not an issue of saying, I will not see anger when we're discussing inheritance. At one point, you will see it. The question is, how do you deal with it? Within each family, let's imagine your deceased loved ones have gone, you've buried them, and now you're beginning the discussions about the estate and how to distribute it. There's always that family member who arrives already angry. Their anger comes in before any document is read, before you have convened everybody, before you even have a proposal discussed. They don't wait for anyone to speak. As soon as they get into the room, their anger is already there. They raise their voices very quickly and they react defensively. You can see them from a mile away. They assume bad intentions from the onset. Everybody in that room is an enemy as soon as they step in. They threaten legal action, and they tend to have conspiracy theories. They want to accuse everybody of conspiring or being against them. So they'll dominate these discussions. They'll make anything productive impossible because they come out as a force to shut everyone up. Most families will assume the problem is their anger, but that isn't the truth. What if the anger is not the real issue? What if the anger is simply the white smoke, the smoke screen they have put up for you to be toned down? Beneath this smoke, there's something much deeper burning, and you need to talk about it, though rarely do we want to say anything about people's anger, especially when we are discussing distribution of assets. Most inheritance conversations focus on greed, but many estate conflicts are not fueled by greed. They're fueled by very, very old emotional wounds, wounds that were never acknowledged. Inheritance simply gives these wounds a stage, and a huge stage at that. And this stage is running for years, sometimes months, sometimes years. The angry family member is often carrying years of unresolved experiences. They could have felt overlooked, less loved. They could have felt excluded during the years that you were together, and you probably didn't see it. They could have also spent their years with you comparing who has the best car, who has the best outfits. Why are you getting married and I'm not? Why are you moving out of the home and I'm not? Why are you traveling abroad? Why did you study a science subject and I did an art subject? The reasons can even be as petty as why do you get to sit on that chair and I don't? So they're comparing everything and they're living through this, and for them it's a raw wound, but you don't seem to understand that it's about to blow up when you go into an estate discussion. They feel disrespected, but more often than not, they disrespect everybody in the room. It could be that they've been feeling powerless, so they try to use their anger to bring out a show of power because they feel unseen. So the estate discussion becomes a place where all these emotions, and it's a cacophony, it's a melting pot of emotions. So you can't deal with one without considering all the others. All these emotions emerge in this melting pot. Unresolved pain often reappears as anger. Now, pain is vulnerable, but anger feels powerful. Many people would rather appear angry than wounded. When you feel angry, it gives them short bursts of adrenaline. With pain, pain is associated with timidity, with being powerless, with being weak. So they don't want that pain to show. What they want to show is a level of power. So the anger feeds that need. And they would rather appear angry than wounded because they must put their seat at the head of the table. So grief becomes anger, disappointment becomes anger. They bring out fear and shame and they turn that into anger as well. The estate discussion becomes the safest place they know to release emotions. And they could have had these emotions for decades, so that's all they know. So keep in mind the anger may not be about the estate. Don't assume that they're angry about the land or the property. Sometimes they're angry because either the mother favored the sibling or a father never acknowledged them, or they made sacrifices or what they thought were sacrifices and they felt these were ignored. They could have been carrying responsibilities and no one was appreciating them. They could feel invisible over the years and now they have an opportunity to bring themselves to the front of the stage. So the estate becomes symbolic. The property is no longer property, it is evidence. It's evidence of the worth they're looking for, the level of importance they seek, that sense of belonging that they feel they don't have. And they use this time frame as you're doing the distribution of the estate to seek recognition. They want somebody to validate them, to pat them on the shoulder. So let's imagine there are two brothers, and one cared for the parents for many years, maybe 10 or so years, while another one went abroad to study. When the distribution of the estate begins, the caregiver becomes extremely furious. Underneath, everyone is looking at them and wondering what's going on. But that particular caregiver sibling may be thinking for 10 years, nobody noticed my sacrifice. Nobody has thanked me. It was all futile. That's what they're thinking. And the argument is now about, it's not, the argument is about acreage, but the wound is there. The wound is what you should be looking for. The wound is about recognition. By saying nobody notices my sacrifice, they're not asking you to give them a trophy. They want somebody to say, you did so well, thank you so much, and give them that recognition they so clamor for or crave. People fight the hardest over what has emotional meaning. And that's why some families spend so many years fighting over one house or a chair, or they'll fight over an heirloom, a ring, photographs, or even a parcel of land. Despite its value, the item itself is often not the issue. The emotional meaning attached to it is. So there are different types of anger in siblings, but we must look out for specific ones. Look out for the anger controller. That's another type of anger, and one or two siblings may have this. The anger controller is a person who is not wounded, but they use anger strategically. This type of sibling uses anger as a tool. They have learned that when they shout, threaten, when they intimidate people, they scream, they have silos and create caucuses, when they intimidate you and create scenes, if they go out and gossip, slander, and ruin your reputation, it will make everyone become uncomfortable. So they play that strategically. They know that you're going to stop challenging them. They also know that some siblings are going to withdraw, others will surrender. So they start looking for these kingdoms, if I could call them that. They want to gain control. And we know that whatever produces results gets repeated. So if anger successfully controls people for years, they know it now has become their strategy. not just an emotion. The family unintentionally trains the behavior by rewarding it. If you go silent, you're rewarding it. If you confront them, you're giving them chance to get more angry. More often than not, we find people saying, let's just give them a chance, give them what they want. I want peace. Let them do as they please. And as you do this, their anger becomes stronger. The hidden fear is that if they are antagonized, they're going to turn on me. So someone says, I'm not going to get involved with this particular relative. And many of these chronologically angry relatives have something that we are not looking at. Their fear is that we will see how terrified they are. They're terrified of losing influence, identity, status. They want relevance, and they feel that if they don't force it, they'll lose it and therefore lose control, especially after the death of a parent. Because the parent is often held as the referee, the glue. The parent holds the family system together. Now that they're gone, the structure is changing. This angry person starts to feel unstable. Instead of expressing fear, they express rage. And we need to consider that fear disguises itself as control. The more fearful a person feels internally, the more controlling they often become externally. And when we learn to see that, we will know that a person who's controlling is pulling it from a root of fear. Control will give them temporary emotional security. They'll feel great. It's short-lived. It doesn't create peace. It never will. They won't find that peace, because when they go home to sleep on their own in the middle of the night, they will realize that they've antagonized everyone. They do feel it, believe me. Our mistake as families is that we respond incorrectly. We either fight back, which escalates the conflict, or we give in, which rewards the behavior. Neither solution works. We also need to look at angry relatives in family discussions regarding estate from an addiction perspective. And there are so many families dealing with addiction in today's present state. Some families become organized around one person's emotions. Everyone begins asking, if I say this, will this person be upset? What if they explode? If I tell them that their anger is derailing us, what if they back at me? What if they turn against me? We need to start asking, okay, they're going to get upset. Why? If they explode, do we cower away or do we act? Family members need to start asking how to avoid the conflict, but don't run away from it. Find different ways of solving the estate discussion so that you can allow them to go on their pretty merry way. The entire family system revolves around emotional management. And this is really pushed by the angry sibling, and it's a very dangerous thing. Because when you move away from facts, from dealing with the estate in its entirety using the law, if you fail to deal with the amicability, then you're delving into a space where nobody speaks honesty. Truth becomes less important than avoiding their anger. What is feared gains power. The more we as a family fear someone's reaction, the more influence that person gains. And fear quietly transfers power. So you probably are wondering how to deal with these angry family members. The first thing is separate the emotion from the issue. When anger appears, ask, what is the actual issue? And what emotion might be underneath it? Look at the possible hidden emotions. Are they still grieving? Are they fearful? Do they have shame for something they did in childhood or as you were growing up? Do they feel rejected now, or did they feel rejected by their parents? Did they do something to their parents that they're embarrassed about? Were they jealous of siblings and their achievements? Were they helpless, or did they make themselves helpless? Because to be candid, there are some family members who know that all they have to do in life is wait for an inheritance. So they sit back, waiting for the day, especially with aging parents, waiting for the day that they pass on. Once you learn to see these possible hidden emotions, it will change how you interpret their behavior. Once you've interpreted this behavior, don't match it with your own reactions. Don't match their emotional intensity. Many people respond by becoming angry too. If you're angry, they're angry, what happens? You're going to explode. Now you have two emotional storms, a tsunami. You have a wave coming from east, you have a wave coming from the west, and in the middle is the entire family trying to sort out these storms. You have to remain calm. Calmness is not weakness. It is emotional discipline. Use documentation instead of debate. Angry people thrive on emotional conversations. So with them, use minutes, and with the minutes, have an action log. Use written agreements. Use whatever you circulate, make sure they acknowledge it within 48 hours. If they don't want to value land, ensure you have valuations from professionals. If they don't want to deal with facts, get legal documentation. The courts of justice are there for that reason. If you feel no one can speak to each other, there are too many angry people, get independent opinions. Facts will reduce emotional manipulation. Also learn to ask clarifying questions. We are not taught how to ask questions appropriately. So it's time to start learning. Instead of arguing, ask, help us understand your concern. That's a question you can ask them. Because you need to get to the root of why they're acting the way they are, why their anger has become such a big deal. You can also ask them, if they decide that they want to control everything, you can ask them, what outcome would you feel is fair to us? Because now you're removing them from that equation and saying, okay, you want this, now how about us? What is fair for us? You will start chipping at what the real issue is. Be ready to get a response you don't like, because the angry person is holding on unresolved issues. You need to refuse emotional blackmail. Do not make mistakes because they've shouted or threatened or they've stormed out of a meeting or they're creating fear. No, that's emotional blackmail. And it will only take you into a spiral, black hole into a void. Make decisions based on fairness. And if fairness is not working, turn to the law. In all these things, be transparent. And if your family is listening, because they may not show you they're listening, but still mention the family values, because you've grown through experiences together and there are things the family valued. What they do, these angry family members do, is try to isolate everyone so that the family breaks up completely. If all this fails, use neutral facilitators, but keep in mind that angry siblings or family members are also going to attack these mediators. However, mediators are trained to deal with conflict resolution. Look for governance advisors to come and guide you if you have family businesses. Look for family facilitators just to ensure the meeting runs smoothly, to ensure that nobody overtalks or takes too much time or makes it a platform for ranting. If you have trusted elders that your parents had, friends, family friends or relatives, call them in. Again, take note that some of these angry relatives or siblings will try and break down these elders. They will abuse them, they'll call them names, they will try and trash them. They don't care about the years that the family was held together as a bigger clan. And if all this fails, go for independent professionals. For a business, look for people who can actually advise the business independently. Sometimes the family is too emotionally entangled to solve all issues alone. So a family is a system, and systems are stronger than personalities. You must remember that the family as a whole is a system. So personalities will change. The family often focuses on changing the angry person, but that doesn't work. It rarely works. There are very few cases where the angry person would calm down. So if it's something you think you're going to change, years will pass without you changing that person. Instead, try and create a system that reduces the power of dysfunction. Do this through meeting rules. It becomes very professional, very, structured, but you've moved away from camaraderie and fireside chats because of this angry person. You now need meeting rules for every meeting. You need someone to lead these meetings. You need documented processes. Minutes must be written. You want transparent communication. Anything that is not laid on the table is disregarded. You also don't want them to go into an emotional rant where they're bringing back accusations from 10 years ago. It's about accountability structures. It's about facts, putting facts on the table. They can keep their emotions or the remembrance of slights to themselves. Keep the system structured and more often than not get independent oversight, someone to guide the family through the discussion. Healthy systems will protect your family from unhealthy personalities. So when you encounter the angry family member, don't immediately ask them why they're so angry. Ask yourself, what story have they been carrying that no one has heard? Sometimes the answer reveals the wounded person. Sometimes it reveals a controlling person. Sometimes the person is both wounded and controlling. Family members who are always angry rarely fight only about property. They may be fighting about recognition, identity, belonging, fairness, unresolved grief, old family wounds, and even their own failings in life. So the estate simply becomes the battlefield where those hidden struggles finally emerge. That's where the balloon bursts. And until families learn to address both the assets and the emotions, many inheritance conflicts will continue long, long, long after the paperwork is finished. So the loudest voice in an inheritance dispute is not always arguing about land. Remember that. And sometimes it's a lifetime of unspoken pain demanding to be heard. Hope this helps. I look forward to seeing you in yet another episode of Inheritance Conversation. Please call in more family members to join us as we discuss. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.